I think this might be the biggest crowd we've had in a while. I'm guessing it might be a topic or two you might be interested in, am I right?
Yep.
Yeah, because I actually see a lot of faces I haven't seen before, so welcome. Is anyone here for the first time tonight, like never been to a meeting? Wow, that's awesome, well welcome. Tonight's a little bit different. Usually at town halls we have a guest speaker come in, and the board really wanted to just take some time and talk on a few topics that are, either recently voted on in a meeting or there's just some unanswered questions. That said, it doesn't mean I'm going to have all the answers, but Jen is here with me, and we're going to take notes for anything that we don't have answers for tonight. We'll make sure to get you answers. So with that, I just want to dig in and start with weeds in the community. How many of you have weeds in your own yards, like just popping up all over? Yeah, so do I. So do I. So of course the same thing is going to happen in the community. And so I asked Gothic to put something together for us, because one of the biggest complaints we get in the office is common area weeds. And so this is kind of most of you probably know, a way that you can take care of your weeds. But Phoenix metro area averages just 8 inches of rainfall each year. So it tells you the months too: January, February, July, and August. Those are the heavy rainfall. So that's usually when a lot of your weeds and stuff are popping up, because the rain obviously brings them. But I like it because it gives some hints too with pre-emergence and post-emergence. Do you use those in your own yards? Anybody pre-emergent? Okay. And the post-emergence. And then of course the timing with them, right? If it's rainy and whatnot, you don't want to put them down because really will not needs to do. But number two, also, it can actually leak to other plants and kill other plant life. So there's definitely some art to that. Get to the next one. So we wanted to kind of go over what might be causing some of the spike in weeds and just talk on this for a little bit. Rain is the main contributor to weed growth in Arizona. And in 2017, Santan received 4.96 inches of rain for the year, and in 2018 it was 9.37. So you can see how that really jumped. So just alone in 2019, in the first 2 months, we have already received 2.53, which is already more than half of what we had in 17. So, landscaper coming to me and telling me this, of course I'm going to say, okay, so what do we need to do? So I don't know how many of you know that Gothic Landscape is our landscape company out here. But there's a few things too that I want to share with you about the landscape company, about spraying, etc. And it starts at the bottom. Johnson Ranch has a spray technician who's dedicated full-time to weed control at Johnson Ranch. In addition to our spray tech, Gothic has sent in an additional 420 hours of spray assistance at no charge to the community. And they truly have. That's not the only area they bring extra crews in. So they know how important it is to stay on top of things. But one thing I do want to make sure I emphasize is we have one spray tech. His name's Bo, and he works hard. He is constantly moving, constantly spraying weeds throughout the community. We do ask, Jen pushes even more so for the green, so that you can tell if there's weeds. We all want to know, has it been addressed? This is no excuse. But just to maybe help you understand why sometimes the weeds pop up. I've had it in my own yard where you just pull them and 2 days later you're pulling weeds again. So they will do their best, especially if there's an area that has an overgrowth, they will do their best to get back to that area. But it's important too to remember that the crews are on a 6-week cycle. And I know that's difficult sometimes because you might live in an area that has certain plants that grow faster. And it's frustrating because it looks unkept or you think that it should have been trimmed and it's not. And we need to emphasize that it is a 6-week cycle. What we do offer in a particular area you live in, if you notice something, we ask that you call the office if it's something that's really frustrating to you so that we can tell you, you know what, they're at week 5, they're going to be in your area next week. Sometimes, although this is difficult, because we're wanting to stay on schedule, we'll pull them off to go take care of something, but then it's like a domino effect, as you can imagine, because now they're behind on their 6-week cycle. So I think most of you probably know, if you've been to meetings, that we recently did tree trimming in the community. Tree trimming throughout the community is just vital, number one, to the health of the tree, but also safety and, quite honestly, keeping that tree. If a tree grows too big, it's going to possibly fall over during a storm, but when you are trimming the branches and there's airflow and there's way for wind to pass through, it definitely helps. So that's something that the board recently trimmed major trees in the community, and we're going to be putting it on I think it's a 3-year program. We're still talking about that, but so the trees are kept trimmed. Part of the reason I'm telling you this is because when they have to go and constantly raise these canopies, because it's a 10-foot, I believe, our contract reads, it's a 10-foot, might be 8, I think it's 8 foot, it's 10 foot, okay, 10-foot canopy, which means if there's a tree in an area and they're in that area at that time, they have to raise the canopy 10 feet from the ground. So as you can imagine, if we're not trimming the trees like we should, which we are, and we're working on putting them on a regular cycle, it allows them to stay on their 6-week cycle. So I know that can be really frustrating sometimes, that it feels like forever that they've come back around, but just try to keep in mind the timing on that. What do you think happens if we were to shorten that to a 4-week cycle? If we all said we want a 4-week cycle, what does that bring about? Anyone?
More cost?
Right, more cost. I'm sure you can all figure that one out. So it'd be more crews, more people to get around. So that's where a little bit of patience comes in. It doesn't mean that we're not doing our job. And every one of you that calls in and you have something to report, we create a work order. I will tell you, we're not perfect. We do our best. Best thing is to call Sarah at the front desk. She's amazing. When you call her, she'll put a work order in, and it goes into a system that is there and stays in front of us. We have board members that look at this too, and they're like, oh, by the way, did you know that you have open work orders? I don't know where it went. And so we do monitor them, and especially like with the landscaping ones, I've got a couple of them in my office that just love to watch those and make sure those are getting done, because we do hear you, we do understand your concerns. Okay, before we move on to this, were there any questions or comments with regards to Deb?
You say an additional 420 hours of spray assistance at no charge to our community. Sounds great, but again, here's the problem I have when you give out a number like that. Are we talking, oh, sorry. I'm sorry. I should know this. I know, I do. Okay, the additional 420 hours of spray assistance at no charge. Sounds awesome. What time period are you talking about that? Is that over the course of a year?
I don't have the time frame on that. But I think it's pretty significant. 420 hours, that's a lot of hours for a company to come in.
If you look at it over the course of a year, it's 8 hours once a week. So it's one person a week. So I understand what you're saying, but if that's what it takes to maintain our properties, which it's not even doing right now, our common areas, it looks horrible. It's just a point I'm trying to make.
Thank you.
I have a question.
I get the one. I could do it.
While we're doing questions, you want to do this and I'll be here.
I absolutely agree with you. I think that was a great thing to bring up. And everybody's going to have their comments here and not like what some people say, but we all live in this community, and everybody has a right to speak from what they say. My thing was, you brought up that the landscapers, that they do such an amazing job. I live in Equestrian Manor, and it is horrible there. And part of that is when you go out of Stardust Way, the trees are always overhanging and scratching the top of our vehicles. I took pictures of it. It looks horrible. Magma Ranch looks better than our community right now, in my opinion.
So Jen will be writing things down, and it will become a work order tomorrow. Just curious, I know sometimes homeowners get frustrated with this question. It is a big community, and Jen and I do our best to get out on a weekly basis, and it's weekly with the landscaper. Everything anyone ever calls into us, we drive. We go and we take a look at them. And if it needs to be fixed that day, it's fixed that day. I just share that because I feel bad that you've been frustrated, but have you called the office?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Multiple times.
About the trees?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So what I will make sure that I'm doing with my team is anytime there's a call, even if they have said, well, there's a trim schedule and they're coming around, it's still going to be written up as a work order. Because like in this last trimming, there were only certain species of trees that were trimmed. So obviously trees like yours, they're going to have to be watched closer. So it's on our radar.
Thank you.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
I have a question about the weeds in the common areas. I'm wondering if the roads and the curbing is considered common area, because I've noticed I'm around Narravilla and Indigo Sky, both roads, there's lots of weeds growing up in the road. So is that part of the weed spraying also?
So that's kind of a tricky one because the roads they're Pinal County, they're maintained by Pinal. But I can tell you too that we kind of have a different mindset if it's affecting a certain area and the aesthetics. It's a simple fix. But the next part to that is we do have to be careful because we are then asking our landscapers yet again to do someone else's job. Jen and I are working really hard at building a relationship with Pinal County. We've met with them several times on issues with the community, and they've been wonderful. So we're building that relationship. So we will add this to the list to let Pinal County know that we need them to come in and look at the maintenance of their roads. That was a really good question. Really good. Also, just real quick, so that you know as well, the sidewalks that abut the street are Pinal County. It's really important if you are walking and you see an area, Pinal County loves to know. We called in an area and they were there within the week fixing it. So if you're ever out and about and you happen to come across a sidewalk area that has a problem, you can just notate the area. And we're even happy to call Pinal County for you if you want to let the office know. Happy to do that. Yes?
Thank you. As far as landscaping, as far as the contract with Gothic, isn't it really their responsibility anyway for weed control? I mean, it sounds like we've got the 420 hours in there extra, but isn't it in their contract anyway is weed control?
It is. Contract was bid with one spray tech, so that's what he does. He's around every day, and I believe I don't know what. Do you know what Bo's schedule is on the weeds?
Every week he's in. He rotates back around until the other day.
So it's everywhere, weekly. That's what I thought.
Okay, so
I had heard. Yes.
so Johnson Ranch has a spray technician. He doesn't work for the association. He works for Gothic. Then it's not two different people.
He works for Gothic.
Okay. Next question is, do we have any type of schedule for this spring as far as aeration of the lawns, fertilizing, and trying to get a nice lawn this summer?
I don't have it yet, but we've been working with Gothic too on making sure that they provide the information. We send those in our weekly constant contacts. We're trying to also be better about letting the community know when we're taking those steps, when we're doing those things.
To follow up his question, so which lawns? All of them? Which ones are out of the budget that will not be handled?
I don't know how to answer that question tonight. It's probably something that will be a point of discussion with the board. I know it made a difference to the areas we were overseeding. Obviously, they were treated differently. So that is definitely a question we'll have to ask Gothic, and then maybe try to put something together for these questions tonight in a follow-up that would maybe help answer some of them. I don't have that answer for you tonight. Yes?
Are they going to do a better job at mowing the lawns in the parks? They tend to come and mow the grass so short that eventually they kill the grass out and they're mowing dirt. And the dirt's flying all over the park. And we've mentioned that a number of times, but I think they're supposed to keep the guys busy, so they make sure they mow every single week, even though the grass hasn't grown. And now there's areas that are all dirt. There's one at the corner of Marabella and Johnson Ranch that's got a lot of dirt areas from the mowing. The park right across from it's got a lot of dark areas. The No Name Park that's on Marabella and Sedona Way, it has some areas with no grass because they've been mowing dirt. Can somebody talk to them and see if they can possibly learn a proper way to mow the grass and keep the mower a little taller when it's 110 degrees and the grass isn't growing?
I'm absolutely happy to bring that up with them. Did you get those 2 locations? Okay, why don't we move on? If we move on from a topic before you had a chance to ask a question, make sure you write it down. We have a little pad too if you need to, so you don't want to forget something. Happily hand you a piece of paper, and then at the end, if we have time, we'll go ahead and move forward. We wanted to go over the private investigator and the use of their services. Jen? So their sole purpose is to run plates so that we can identify a vehicle that we can't identify. And this is usually a vehicle that is parked in a common area or near a park, or this is a vehicle that keeps moving around. So as I stated here, violation issued before street parking. So let me share the process. So we're talking about on street right now in front of homes. I cannot tell you how many times we've had vehicles just move around. And we keep getting the reports from security because they do, from 1 to 5, they report the cars that are parked on the street. Well, what's happening is it's really hard to tag a car to a home. So we'll usually try 2 times through a violation. And that means we send it to Mrs. White. Mrs. White says, it's not mine. Close out a violation. It's clearly in front of her house. Car shows up again in front of someone else's house. And we send a violation to Mr. Brown, and Mr. Brown says, that's not my vehicle. At that mark, it doesn't make any sense to keep chasing them. It's everyone's time. So that is typically when one of the instances of which we will use their services to pull a plate. And it just, we've only had to do this 2 times where we weren't able to, because we do everything we can first, is what I'm trying to tell you. So since we have implemented this, we've only used it 2 times. We've got some problems that my team's coming to me for and wanting to know if there's an opportunity that we can pull some plates, and we're looking at that. The other instance is when people are parked, in those areas where there's nothing, there's just granite, you turn the corner and you're into homes. We have a lot of people that move their vehicles and they park in areas like that. We still do our best to try to kind of investigate on our own, see if we find it parked in someone's driveway, like, oh, there's that vehicle. But when we can't do that, that's when we're pulling a plate so that we can identify. And it's worked both times. It's beautiful. And then we're able to send the violation to the person that it belongs to. Also important to know, and I have it up here, but they are not in the community. There were lots of things, being said that, they're checking for garbage cans you've left out and this, and they don't even come into the community. Everything's done via email and a form that we fill out for them to then, find out whose car it belongs to. Are there any questions on this? Yes.
I understand what you're doing and why you're doing it. Okay. I don't understand why we're paying to have this done, as opposed to when this car is seen parked in the wrong place, the license plate number is not written down. The second time it's seen, a note is left The next time we find it, it will be towed, and the next time we find it, call the tow company and have it towed.
That would be beautiful. There's a certain problem with that, though. Towing vehicles in a community carries huge liability. And quite honestly, I'd rather spend the $16 to pull a plate and send a violation letter and go through that process, but we're just simply not going to tow. They are a bigger nightmare, and they put associations in court all day long. Truly. I know. Trust me.
It's on state property.
We've
You just said that's the county property.
Pinal County won't tow either. They don't tow vehicles either. We've checked with Pinal, but more importantly, we really went to our attorney. We feel the same way you do. We felt like we should have the opportunity to tow a vehicle, but in speaking with the attorney, the liability in it, every single one of them I've ever talked to, because we have meetings with attorneys, and each one of them, the liability is bigger. So the process is working, and it's a minimal cost. We've only had 2, so. Oh, can I just add? I want to add the new enforcement policy. I'm working on getting that posted on the website. We will be assessing the homeowner for the cost of the private investigator, just so you know. So it's an initial upfront, but then it will be tagged to their account. That will be written in the enforcement policy. We'll let you know when that goes out. There's updates on there. It has a fine schedule as well, so that you understand how that works. Who's over here?
Yo,
Roger. Hi, Roger.
several board meetings ago, this subject was discussed, and we pointed out that it's a possibility that we as the homeowners should register with the HOA our license plates for that particular house and have that there, so that when someone spots something there and they put a plate on it, it can be checked against whether that goes with the house, and automatically you know that it's not for that particular thing. Are we working on that in any way or not, or are we thinking about that?
No, that wasn't anything that, as a board, we chose to do. The undertaking of that, it's like I can't even wrap my brain around that one just yet. But it was you brought that up, right. And Michelle, I don't know if you remember.
I would like to jump in. The reason the board pretty much said no on that is invasion of privacy. It would have to be voluntary, so people would have to sign up for it if they wanted to. You can do it right now. You can actually go into your own account, and there's a notes tab. If you want to go in and put your car plate, you can put it right there in the notes.
Yeah, because this happened to me several years ago. And I gave you
We decided that it's not something that we obviously want to mandate. That's not the way we want to go.
I have a question.
Oh, behind you. Slacking.
My question is, why just those few hours? It doesn't really make sense to me.
Oh.
You're talking between 1 and 4 in the morning.
1 and 5.
1 and 5 in the morning. I don't understand those hours. To me, it would be any time after 7 or sundown or something until morning. But just those hours is.
It's very generous. Well, so I wasn't here during that. I don't know if Michelle, were you here when that was, or Tim's here? I know maybe he would know the origination
I'm going
of
to let
those hours.
Tim talk to it specifically.
The original time was 11 to 5 in the morning. The board looked at that because we were getting concerns from homeowners that they have people visiting. There's parties, things like that, and so we did up it to 1 o'clock in order to give people enough time. We figured after 1 o'clock, hopefully people have gone home by that point in time. So that was the reason. It is a policy. CCNRs say we must enforce overnight parking. We, as a board, however, we can define what that time is. So yes, we could change it to 2 o'clock in the afternoon or whatever overnight is, but that is what the current policy is. Doesn't mean it cannot be changed, but think about the impact.
Thank you, Tim.
I have a question, and I'm sorry, this is my first meeting, so I'm kind of getting used to it. But my question was, I was one of the people that did call on a vehicle because it was a little odd. They kept parking in our community and moving around. Come to find out, they actually stole a car in our community. So if the homeowners get a fee for having our vehicles there when they're not there, what happens to those people that are just parked in our community? That could be stalking our community out, or just like that person did, robbed one of the vehicles down the street.
Well, we're always working on tagging a car. We don't know if we have no way to issue a violation because they hop around like that. That's where this process of the PI comes in. That's exactly what it's for. And then of course, if you see suspicious activity of sorts like that, that's a Pinal Sheriff's call. You need to call the county. I wanted to add something really quick. Jen brought this to my attention, and it makes a lot of sense. A lot of the problem we're having, of course, is people have too many cars. They might have teenagers. I have 3 kids myself. Of course, they're older now, but I remember. I made specific changes to my driveway for all the cars in my driveway. So people aren't going to want to register. As much as I love that idea, Roger, they're not going to want to register their cars because they really don't want us knowing. They really don't want to know us knowing that they have 5 cars because, mom, dad, and 3 kids. So that's another thing that makes it difficult. Plus the size of the community too. But a smaller community, and if you could get that past the board, it's not bad. Let's take one more, and then we'll move on.
Yes, my concern, I live in Claridge, and there are cars parked on both sides, and it's very hard to pull up, and I'm concerned from the day if the cars that are parked and there are children, you can't see when the alarm comes, and it's very dangerous.
Right.
And I have a neighbor that for some reason sometimes he parks around the street, and then the other neighbors park on the street, so this always like that, and that's annoying.
I know, and that's definitely one of the frustrating parts of the community. When you've got 2 cars parked, it's difficult to get through, but that kind of helps explain too, between 1 and 5, if there is a need for an emergency vehicle as well. It could happen any time during the day, and it makes it difficult any time of the day. But also, during the night, having those streets clear. Okay. Let's move on. Make sure to write your question down, okay? Is it going? Okay. How many of you came for this one tonight? And I expected to see a whole bunch more hands on that. Bob, can I have? My old eyes are going to get a little closer to read this, and hopefully this doesn't put you to sleep. But I did want to go through a portion of the CC&Rs specific to Article 4, land use classifications, permitted uses, and restrictions. And this is section 4.2. How many of you have a copy of the CC&Rs? Okay, good. How many of you have actually read them? Okay, good. That's a lot. Most of the time you don't get that many hands going up. So let's just buzz through this. For any of you who haven't read this particular section. So this is under architectural control. No excavation or grading work shall be performed on any lot without the prior written approval of the Design Review Committee. No improvement which would be visible from neighboring property shall be constructed or installed on any lot or parcel without the prior written approval of the Design Review Committee. No addition, alteration, repair, change, or other work which in any way alters the exterior appearance, including but without limitation, the exterior color scheme of any part of a lot or parcel, or any improvements located thereon which are visible from neighboring property, from their appearance on the date this declaration is recorded, or from their appearance as previously approved by the Design Review Committee, shall be made or done without the prior written approval of the Design Review Committee. Any owner desiring approval of the Design Review Committee for the construction, installation, addition, alteration, repair, change, or replacement of any improvement which is or would be visible from neighboring property shall submit to the Design Review Committee a written request for approval specifying in detail the nature and extent of the addition, alteration, repair, change, or other work which the owner desires to perform. The Design Review Committee may from time to time adopt submittal requirements, including without limitation a standard form of application as may be necessary for the committee to perform its duties hereunder. Any owner requesting the approval of the Design Review Committee shall also submit to the Design Review Committee any additional information, plans, and specifications which the Design Review Committee may request. So hopefully some of you maybe picked up on a few things or go to the next screen, learn a few things from that. How many of you received the letter in the mail with regards to unapproved?
Come on, that should be everybody.
Yeah. Everybody put your hand. It was sent to the owner of record. So, and it suggested a $250 fine, which I'm just going to tell you now that the board nor my office had any idea how that was just going to go crazy. But I can share with you that the process has worked. We have an amazing Design Review Committee. How many applications would you say you've processed since this? 400, 500?
We're pushing 600.
600? We normally do anywhere between 30 to 20 to 40 in a month. So, some of the things that I want to talk about tonight regarding this. I've had a lot of people walking in the office most recently saying, these CC&Rs have changed. The CC&Rs, they haven't changed. There's been a few amendments along the way, and they're typically to give you a little more room to do something. But the CC&Rs themselves, you cannot change something in your governing documents without a 75% vote of the association of all membership. So 6,071 homes, you would need a 75% vote to change the documents. So it's important to note that I'm not sure why a lot of people think the CC&Rs have changed recently. They haven't. Now, one thing that can be done, Tim kind of touched on this a little bit, additional guidelines and such can be added for use in the community. Of course, they need to be, in alignment with your documents. So, your design and landscape guidelines and community rules. How many of you have seen that? Okay. Is that posted? Okay, yeah, that one is definitely. Possibly the application's there for people to pull. This one is really important to read because it's going to better define and specify from all that I just read. Because what I just read is kind of black and white. It doesn't really give you the breakdown of things. That's where your design review committee comes in, requests certain requirements, and then takes it to the board for an approval, thus the design and landscape guidelines and your community rules. From time to time, we find that these things need to be updated because something just keeps coming up again and coming up again. And rather than having it just, keep coming up and we have to keep going and getting answers, we go to the design review committee and we say, hey, will you add this to the list for redlining? Basically what that means, and we're working on this currently, we are working on additions to better clarify some things. And I love it because the document is ever changing as it needs to be changed. But it's never adopted until your board of directors adopts it. So currently, Bob, do we have a timeline at all for the redlining? Have you guys decided when you think? The next couple of months. Okay, yes, because they meet once a month, it does take a bit. But they have been tasked with just combing through everything in these guidelines. I've added a few things as well that I would like the board to consider so that things are spelled out more clearly. Now that being said, the guidelines, if you read it, you could go, wow, that's just like any change. I saw that, it said any change to the exterior, okay. documents are written, 20 years ago sometimes. There's this thing called sensibility, and the board has to work within sensibility sometimes in determining what's okay and what's not, because it's not always spelled out. That's why additional guidelines and things are written, so that it's not always a question. For instance, there are some things that are an auto approval. You still want it recorded and a part of your record, but it can be an auto. What are some of the auto approvals, Jen? Screen doors?
No, security doors.
Security doors.
Security doors.
Sunscreens,
Paint,
flash
security
holes,
cameras,
Paint, security cameras, and
flagpoles.
Paint out the books.
okay. So
Satellite dishes.
yes, there's one. So there are definitely things that we will be working on updating. Just for instance, right? Your documents may or may not say that security cameras are okay. You can put them up where. Well, what makes it difficult for some neighbors is they like to go out in their backyard, but now all of a sudden, up on the eaves of somebody's house is a camera. And oh, by the way, that next door neighbor has actually shared, with, oh yeah, I see you in your backyard, and okay. Those are the types of things that we then have to look at and go, okay, is it okay to just, placement? It's the same thing with the solar panels. The state, the government basically allows, you get to put your solar panels up, but there is a placement sometimes. So that's why you put your architectural in. And I had a story in a community I managed a while back where an architectural committee had actually approved these solar panels. Okay, great, signed off on it. Well, what they didn't pay attention to was the design of them. And so on the side yard of this owner's home, it was literally in the yard, a panel probably about 3 feet wide, extended way above the house. But because it had been approved, it stood. So their job is not easy. They have to look at everything with a fine-tooth comb and nail and make sure they're being consistent and fair. Let me see what's next. Okay. So this is really tiny, and I'll read it for you. There's a process. It's called Resale and Disclosure Department. So you're going to go to sell your home. We as management have to answer these questions that I'll go over in just a little bit. But if you have an unapproved architectural change, your home, it creates a problem for you when you go to sell your home, because it has to be remedied. So either you as the seller are going to give a concession for buyer coming in that now has to take down this carport that you built without permission, and it's not supposed to be there. So as much as there was angst and some things being said about board trying to make this a money thing and pocket and money and all that, I can tell you not at all the intent. It truly is in place really twofold. First, part of the reason why we had to implement something is we literally had homeowners come in and tell us, I don't care what you or the board thinks, we're going to do this anyway. And they would. So they would go and make their alteration. And the next part is we're trying to make sure that you are prepared, should you ever want to go and sell your home, that there's nothing that gets in the way and creates a holdup on the sale of your home. So it's for your protection. And a fine is there, mainly for those people who are blatantly ignoring that it's there and it needs to go through the proper channels. The questions that are asked, oh my heavens.
Hey, you want my glasses?
Do you know how to read my I have my glasses.
Hang on, let me see if I can read it.
That's not going to help.
Okay. Oh my God.
I'm just going to read it from here.
Greek. Yeah.
I got it. So part of the questions we have to answer and be able to disclose when these forms come to us. And by the way, we have a 48-hour turnaround when we get them. Are there any architectural violations of record? Are there any special assessments? Is the association currently voting on a special assessment? Is this unit involved in any pending litigation with the association? And then lastly, the statement, please confirm that there are no open violations in First Service Connect assigned to the previous owner of the unit that should be displayed on the resale certificate. If there are open violations, they will need to be transferred to the current owner. So it kind of says it right there, even on this form. Something that we've put into place, because it would be impossible for Jen and I to, like, I think we were averaging somewhere between 40 and 50 home sales a month. It's dropped a little bit the last couple months. I see that though, picking up. We literally pull these reports off and we utilize our compliance team that is out there in the community, and they go by every single one of these homes and they check to see if there are any unapproved architectural modifications or anything that's going to create a problem. It's not that it's just creating a problem for buyer seller at the time. It could create a problem later down the road as well. The other thing that Jen hears a lot, and God bless her, she seriously heads this off and does an amazing job at making sure that these applications are in and to the committee, and just the process of the packets being put together is extremely time consuming. But another thing that was happening a lot, and another reason the board made this decision, was because people were doing their alterations and then they would bring their form in. So in the long run, this helps you, the owner. And so we are not going to be out there with binoculars going, where's the changes, making a fine. We don't want a fine. That's not it at all. It really is more about these things that I've shared tonight. Are there any questions? Yes.
You took off on me.
So I'm actually in this same predicament as the buyer, I feel like, maybe. I called and talked to Sarah this afternoon. So I live in Equestrian Manor, and according to the records of what she pulled up for me this afternoon, I have a tack room on my property that was never submitted for, which is a large reason why we bought the property, and it's been there for probably like 7 or 8 years. And so I am willing to submit the paperwork for it. That's not an issue, but I'm terrified that it's not going to get approved, and it's like the reason we bought the house.
I'll try to answer that for you, man. I'm the chairman of the design review committee. I'm the one that has to look at all this stuff.
Oh, Robert, let's be friends.
Of all the ones we've looked at so far, the board's kept an eye on me, and the committee, management's kept an eye on me, and the committee. Everyone's been keeping an eye because we know what kind of dust up was coming with this. We have found, especially with the ones that are pre-existing, yours is pre-existing, and especially in equestrian where you have a lot more room, you usually don't have a problem. We're looking for certain designs. We're not looking to say, tear it down. That's not our goal in life. Okay, we're not here to create hate and discontent, although everyone thinks I am. Our goal is to try to make sure we keep the property up so that you can sell it and keep it, maintain it, and have everything you want. If you turn in your paperwork with it, do me a favor, fill out the document, take a photo. Yeah. Give me some rough figures as far as the layout of it goes, as far as dimensions. And we will do what we can to help you on that. We're here to help, we're not here to take you apart.
Is it helpful to, like, it fits
Microphone, please.
If it fits within, especially in Equestrian Manor, if there are several homes that have similar tack rooms in their yard, is it helpful to see those, like it fits within the design of the community?
I'm chuckling with you, not at you. There's a reason why I'm chuckling. I'll explain that in a minute. The reason, one of the other reasons I didn't bring up that we want to look at the dimensions is because by county statute, by county statute, we can only cover 1/3 of your backyard. That's the backyard plus the 2 side yards. So we're looking at square footage too, okay? The other reason why this document came up, we're sitting at the design review committee, and Jennifer comes up and says, hey, I want to do this on my house, and here's a photo of my next door neighbor.
Well, yeah.
And they're on it, and thanks, you just gave me a whole bunch of work I didn't want.
But also that,
So another thing to keep in mind too is, it is the seller's responsibility to disclose this. And I believe there's a statute somewhere that gives an amount of time for you to actually go back to seller. There's also a clause in the form that we do that indemnifies it, that takes the responsibility off us as well, because we do our best, but some things we can't see because we don't ever enter on your property. It's trespassing. So I would go ahead and put the application in. If there's a problem, I'm assuming you purchased recently. It's something that you can go back to your seller for.
Well, I think this.
If it's a concern, you may be just fine. Yeah, and you definitely want that on record because the next time we come about, if you go to sell your home, right?
I don't want anyone to show up 6 months from now.
So here's the other thing I want to say about that. Like I said, we are not going to have our binoculars on, going and looking for these things. And contrary to some of the belief out there, we work with homeowners a lot more than you'd ever know. Our desire is not to upset you. If something comes up and it's been missed in the process and maybe you didn't understand it was supposed to be done, there's still going to be a process of which we'll work with you. Michelle?
Yep.
When did you start using